afternoon, and thank you for joining us both in the audience and virtually for our part two of our Women's Equality Day program conference. We have today, as we discussed earlier, a panel discussion. We are speaking to some various women throughout the agency who are in leadership positions. They have a lot to share with us regarding their experience, best practices, etc. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Susan Schuback. She is in CIO, and she will kind of give a little bit more information as far as her position and what she does where she is. Tawana Preston, who's in the Office of the Secretary. We also have Frances Bush, who is in CPD, and Dr. Sheila Wright, who is the Chief Learning Officer within OCHICO. Before we get started with the questions that we have, ladies, could you each just describe a little bit of your experience, what you do in your current position, and how you got to that role?
It's on, okay. So clearly I'm not really in the CIO because I can't use technology. Right now my position is it's basically an administrative position. I have resource management, human capital, acquisition management, and general administrative support for the CIO in my portfolio. My background is mostly in budget. I've done budget, jobs for the better part of 20 plus years. So that's really where I've grown up, is in the budget world. And prior to coming to the CIO, I was actually in the CFO's office here at HUD as the budget director. So that's basically what I do.
So I am the Executive Operations Officer for the Office of the Secretary, and I am responsible for all critical business areas in the Office of the Secretary, which include IT, procurement and contracting, human capital, the budget. I actually am the allotment holder for about 7 offices that make up departmental management. I supervise all the career staff in the Office of the Secretary and the Office of the Deputy Secretary. I'm the EEO coordinator. I am also the agency transition director. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but that's a lot. So I've actually been in this position for 4 years. Prior to coming to the Office of the Secretary, I was on the program side in the Office of Public and Indian Housing, in the Office of Field Operations, where I assisted the DAS in leading 750 folks across the field. Prior to coming to that office, I was in the Office of Public and Indian Housing in their occupancy division. And so I came to HUD with experience in housing, starting out in the Arlington County Section 8 office, and then moving on to management consulting, AIDS housing, and finally NARL before coming to HUD. But prior to coming to housing, I was actually in science, and so this is a significant career shift for me and one that's been rewarding. And so that's a little bit about me.
My name is Frances Bush. I am currently the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Operations for CPD. In that position, I am responsible for the program as well as operating budgets for CPD. I am responsible for human resources, for information technology, and responsible for the CPD staff in HUD's 43 field offices. Prior to this position, I served as the Director for Community Planning and Development in the District of Columbia field office. And prior to that, I served in various CPD program areas, primarily the home program office.
Okay. As Chief Learning Officer, I'm responsible for shaping the developmental opportunities for our employees, also to primarily focus on shifting HUD from a kind of ad hoc training mindset to more of a learning and development focus strategically throughout the department. making sure that our employees, that we minimize our skills gaps, providing leadership development opportunities for the workforce, and giving the workforce opportunities to strengthen their competencies and skills, thus being able to meet the department's mission.
Thank you, ladies. So we'll get started with our questions, and at any time, folks in the field, you're able to email your questions. The email address should come up on your screen, but you're able to email any questions you have for the panel, and we'll try our best to get your questions answered. First question, and you guys can choose who would like to answer this. What are some specific tools and/or resources in HUD that you are aware of that you feel those interested in advancement should take advantage of?
I nominate Sheila.
Second.
Dr. Ray?
Well, there are a number of developmental programs that are available. Many individuals, as many of you may know, the Emerging Leaders Program is set to start actually in October. We just concluded the application process, and already we have over 350 applications. So we have a number of development programs. We had emerging professionals a couple of years ago. We're hoping to bring that back in 15 if the funds permit. There's the rotational assignment program, which we're hoping that will also become a permanent program. We had that piloted. The pilot ended this year, so we're now working with our partners to make that a permanent program. But there are some other, there's training available in headquarters in the field, but there are other resources that are available. I strongly believe that our supervisors and managers are a resource. Our peers are a resource to gain information, learn information, and also to share. We have individuals here, leaders and managers alike, that are willing to be mentors and coaches to employees that are non-supervisory and supervisory. So there are opportunities in the way of actual activities, but there are also resources and opportunities in the way of people.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. And that was kind of a follow-up question. So we know that there are some formalized training programs and opportunities available to HUD, in which you've mentioned, but you also mentioned some informal mechanisms. And just from personal experience to the rest of the panel, what are a few informal, not just through HUD Learn or the training office, but some small practical resources that you think some employees could benefit from, or they may already have in their repertoire, but they're not aware of, things like that, something that could help them that advance, that's not so formalized.
Well, I think one of the things that could help anyone is a mentor. Having a mentor, someone who you can talk to about your skills, and someone who could honestly share with you what they feel that your skill gaps are once they know what your vision is for what you want to do with your career.
I found that I've needed mentors for different things. So sometimes I needed a mentor about the work, and sometimes I needed it about my training or my career, sometimes just about the organization. So I think people need to also think it's not just one person. It may be one person who can help you out understanding the 10th floor, but another person who might be better at understanding O&B or some of our oversight situationally mentoring, I think can be very beneficial.
And I actually would agree with the panel that mentoring has helped me tremendously. Reaching out to informal networks to get coaching from folks who, been there, done that. I mean, I think that has, it saved me a lot of trouble and heading down the wrong path, tried and true usually wins, right? So I would definitely say that the panel was on point with identifying mentoring and coaching as critical to being a successful leader.
What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
So if I can answer that question, at least attempt to. I think being a good leader means you have to be vulnerable. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. I think you have to put yourself in a position where you your expectation for other folks is not the same as it would be for you, and that's been somewhat of a hard lesson for me. Because as you go, it doesn't necessarily mean that other folks are going to, take that same way to getting to an end or to a solution. And so I've learned as a leader that you have to meet people where they are. You can't make assumptions about how they do or how you. Let me just back up and say the expectations for how folks get to a solution. As long as there is an ability to do the job, you have to sometimes put your trust in the staff that you have and kind of step away. But being vulnerable, I think, has helped me because it's allowed me to learn my staff and get to a place where I appreciate those things that we all bring to the table.
Anyone else care to add to that?
I would add, for me, I think one of the qualities that a leader must have is integrity. I think that you must exhibit to people that you are the same person, on the outside as you are on the inside. When you have integrity, people can see that you are someone to be trusted. They realize that you are not someone who will compromise your values for personal gain. For people to follow you, they must feel that they can trust you and that you have their best interests at heart at all times. And so that's like my number one.
I would say humility, which kind of, I think, integrates what Tawana had offered and what Francis did, in the sense that recognizing that no man is an island, recognizing that it takes people for you to get the job done. It took people for us to we didn't just get to this position on our own. We just flew here, we just got up there and no one helped us to get there. But to recognize, I think when leaders start to become more prideful in a sense and lose a sense of humility, that's when things, they start to their effectiveness in their leadership is challenged. So I would definitely say that humility is the one characteristic that's important to me.
What is one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others?
This is probably, I think we would say that the answer to this question is similar to the first question. If you don't have those characteristics of being humble and vulnerable and showing integrity, then it actually puts you in a position where you don't have the trust of the people that you're asking to follow you. And so I think the biggest mistake is feeling like you've gotten to a certain place and there isn't anything else you can learn from anybody that you've been asked to lead, that you've been asked to lead. I think that's a very critical mistake for some leaders.
I've found that it's very related. Is the mistake I see a lot of times is they're really not listening.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already decided, or they have their own. They don't need your viewpoints. So to be so closed off and to not actually be listening as people that either are working for you or that you're working for. It's a very frustrating. They already know everything and they've got some angle anyway. It may not be they may not have integrity. So it's. I've seen that over and over where they're really not listening to you as they're talking or asking a question.
It's very important for leaders to get the buy-in of their team. Because if you don't get that buy-in, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, it will be very difficult to get to the end. For people to follow you, they have to feel like this was their decision as well. Listen, go through the pros and cons. And then at the end, we all decide, okay, this is the best approach to getting to the end of this project.
I would say not properly assessing the environment. One thing that I know, and I'm going to use a Star Trek analogy. I know some people are like, "Are you crazy?" No, but I'm going to use when every time Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise came upon a territory that he didn't know, the first thing that he would ask Data to do is to run a scan. Okay, and running a scan would allow them to get some sense of whether there was a life form on the on the planet or whatever the case may be, what the makeup is of the oxygen, whether there's oxygen, what gases are around the planet. Okay, in the same context of leadership, I've seen instances where individuals come into an environment and they have their own makeup or perception of how things are without taking the deeper dive. And someone is telling you something and you don't realize that the person has an agenda, so you don't necessarily go for the deeper dive. You take it at face value. One thing that I've learned since being in this position is not to make a snap decision, not to form an opinion about a colleague or someone that works for me or whatever the case may be until I've taken the time to really kind of get the lay of the land and assess the environment to know, where the peaks and valleys are. So that's one thing that I think every leader coming into a new space should do.
Good perspectives. In terms of getting the buy-in from the team component, Francis, I think you spoke to that. Do you find that there are some challenges just in terms of just being a woman as far as getting full team buy-in from your male counterparts, other male leaders, other male subordinates, etc.? Have you seen anything specifically there, any challenges there, or are we just all equal? It's a bunch of equality in leadership.
I think I can speak. I have varied experiences, so I can speak from my first professional career experience where I worked as a scientist at the Naval Research Laboratory, and I was the only woman, the only African American on a team of 6 research scientists, physicists, and the youngest, the person who was the youngest team member was 20 years my senior. So you can imagine I was, a woman, African American, only woman, only African American, and 20 years younger than the youngest person on the team. And so had a lot of really interesting, challenging experiences. The guys that I work with were great. They tried really hard, right? But there were, I think, some disparities in their thinking and how they approach certain situations. And I could tell you story after story, but I think in that environment, maybe it's a little different from what we would experience here because it's such a male-dominated world. So it may be not the best example, but I did learn from that experience. It shaped me greatly to be able to come into even this experience and be able to navigate the relationships and competing interests. And sometimes understand you can't always take it personal just because I'm a woman, just because I'm African American. It may just mean that you have to teach some folks how to treat you. And that's what, that experience taught me. So, yeah, I think people being people, that you're going to run into some challenges where folks who are different from others lack an understanding, and because of that, they react or respond to that lack of understanding. So we get to teach them, right?
I think sometimes women and men approach collaboration in a different way. I have mostly guys who work for me, and when I say collaboration, I really mean that you actually are sitting. It's not an email. It's not it's not virtual, and it's not coordination, which I think is what mostly, that I do this, then you do that. So I think, at least from my experience, that women tend to be a little bit more about doing it simultaneously, at least, collaborating in a face-to-face manner rather than a, sort of, I'll catch you and I'll send you something and then we're done. And both approaches have their merits for different things. I just think sometimes it's just, we do it in a different way.
I think it also depends on the organization. Like Tawana, prior to being at HUD, was at another federal agency that shall remain nameless, Department of Homeland Security, and oh, that was nameless, right? So when I worked there, I was the youngest, one of maybe 2 African American females, and the average age was, and it was mostly, being that it was mostly law enforcement, security, and intelligence, and retired military. Most of my peers and counterparts were in their mid to late 50s, served either in military, law enforcement, intelligence, or on the civil side for 20 plus years, and were white males. So that was a really interesting experience for me, but I learned so much from that. For me, working with them, they needed to recognize or see the competence. They wanted to make sure that I was proficient. So if I shared information with them, or we were engaging in some type of conference or meeting, they never really questioned, or I thought looked at me as I'm something different or less, because as long as they knew that I was proficient in what I did, that I knew my job, that went a long way, even to the point where they were recommending me for different activities outside of DHS. And so it depends. I think it depends on HUD is a little different. But I think it definitely, if you come into a situation and you know your job and you have your wits about you, I think you just move forward in what position you're in.
You know what, let me add something else, though, as you were speaking, Sheila, this came to mind. I think as women, just as we do outside of a professional environment, we have to, gather a bunch of experiences and bring and call those in when we need them in order to get us to achieve what it is we're trying to achieve. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that those experiences for me, and probably for you, may be more professionally intuitive, so it sharpened my blink moment. So like, what it is when you see it, when you feel it. It's just, there's an intuition about how you move as a woman, right? Because again, we're charged with doing so many things and doing them at the same time, whether you're your mother, you're a professional, you're, a daughter taking care of, your elderly parents, whatever it is, you're bringing all those experiences to what you do. And here at HUD, it helps us kind of navigate some of these really challenging situations that we find ourselves in. And so I think as a professional female leader or woman leader, if you're able to call all those experiences when you need them, I think it helps you navigate some of the challenges that we're confronted with.
you doing to ensure that you continue to grow and develop as a leader? And then as an add-on to that, and what are you doing to ensure that you help others that are interested in being leaders grow and develop?
Well, for me, I continue to participate in leadership programs for executives. I continue to volunteer for assignments within the leadership corps in areas where I have not worked before. It's nothing for me to volunteer when we're having meetings and they need someone to do something. I'm like, well, I'll do that. That's how I met Dr. Wright, volunteering to be on a training program. I do that often. I did that recently. And I also, for myself personally, I retrain myself. Skills I already have, I don't mind doing a refresher to make sure that, I'm still good at this. As far as other people, I am a mentor to several young people in the department and inside and outside of CPD. Try to share with them the experiences I've had over the years, as well as trying to give them career advice or to direct them when they need help in their jobs, when you need to go talk to this person or you need to go talk to that person. I try to give back.
Anybody else?
I, like Francis, mentor. I have a number of mentees in the department, both in the headquarters and in the field. And there are individuals that I do coach, both in headquarters and the field. I think that's a part of my development, to be able to share information and get information and get perspective. But there are other opportunities that Tawana and I both, and Susan, were involved in the SES development program during this FY. Learned a lot in that experience about honing our skills and fine-tuning some of the skills that we have as leaders in the department. I think learning is kind of like a state of mind. I don't necessarily think it's something specific that you do. It's just you can be learning every day depending on the experience. It's not necessarily structured. And so I think interacting with people every day is a learning experience, especially here at HUD. But you learn really quickly how to maneuver, how to adjust, how to be flexible, how to be agile. So I think that it's a state of mind. It's a state of mind.
So I want to offer something. If you really want to grow, do what I did. I actually had a live 360 with my staff. Yeah, that's quite a growing experience. But it was a worthwhile experience because again, it taught me that I could be vulnerable in that situation and take the body shots and and the blows and come out of that experience a better leader, right? A better person to my team, because it is a really difficult thing to sit there and listen to people say things about you that you may not agree with. So your first reaction is to jump up and say, "Oh no, you're crazy," But it was a really good experience. So I challenge my panelists here to do the same with your team.
Can I be behind like
No,
a glass
you
panel?
have to be front and center in the middle.
Actually, I did that in the 360
Yeah.
from the development program. So I had about, I think, 3 to 4 of individuals from my team to actually be a part of the 360 from the SES, the one that we did at the beginning of the program. So yeah, that is humbling.
It is, but
It is a humbling
it takes you
experience.
to a whole nother
Yeah.
level in terms of,
Yeah.
how you see yourself,
It's actually worse when you agree with them. You're like,
Yeah, you're right.
I think we have a question from the field.
As a HUD leader, what are you doing in your area to prepare the women who work for you to take your place?
That is a good question.
So one of the things that I get a chance to do that the people who work for me don't always get a chance to do is go to meetings with the senior leadership of HUD, either with the secretary, the deputy secretary, or the Hill. And often they don't love to have an entourage of 15, 20 people, so you feel sort of compelled to not do it, to not go and bring some people along. But there's no way you can translate some of that dynamic just by telling them what happened after you got back from the meeting. So I sort of have, put up with the glares or the looks of why is this person here, and introduced them and said, this is so-and-so, and she works for me, and I want her to be able to understand what's going on. It's important that, it's not just me that can answer your questions. So even when it's not politic or the right protocol, I think we sort of have to bypass some of that and give our employees, even the women, but all of the employees, the opportunity to experience it live instead of just coming back and telling them what actions are necessary. And I've done that a couple of times. It's a little different when you're really only supposed to go 1 or 2 people and you bring in 3 or 4 people.
That's a great idea.
One of the things I've done is in these work groups or task force that I participate on, I will bring someone with me, and I will tell the task force, and these are usually task force of senior executives, office directors, SES, what have you, and I'll say, based on my schedule, sometimes I won't be able to make it, but this person will come to represent me. And I've got someone working on task force right now, so they get a chance to see the inner workings of senior level task force, and I think that's a good experience. It's a growth experience for them.
I have a tendency to be fair and open with information. So I do have an open door policy, do have members from my team, not just women, both women and men that come in to the office, and they may hear me be a part of a conference call or hear me share information, being exposed to that's like, is that really what you go through in a day? Is it that deep? Yeah, well, in this case it is. So having them to be exposed to certain experiences. Also, I'm working to actually but to have a team of individuals in my office to actually go through a process of self-learning together with me. So I meet with them on average of once a month. We have books that we've identified. We go through those books together. How can they work as internal consultants? How do you build your leadership skill? And again, both men and women, so it's, we're equal opportunity. But to actually, for those individuals on my staff, the women on my staff can feel free to come and talk with me at any time, and we're talking a lot about work-life balance. So a lot of it is engaging the staff and to provide them with opportunities to seek you, not just me seeking them out, but them seeking me out as well, so that there's balance there.
And I would agree with what each of the panelists have offered, and I'll just add one other thing. I mean, I encourage my staff to be critical thinkers, so what I challenge them to do is to think about how they would figure out the solution to some of the challenges that I would actually face in doing the day-to-day in my position. Sorry. But more than that, I think it's important to allow folks to shadow you, and so I've done that. So it's kind of in line with what Susan offered. I think that's important to do. But in terms of what we can offer women, I think just the example, right? Because there are a lot of ways you can get people to a better place or where they want to be, in terms of their path. But being an example and showing integrity and just being the best professional model that you can be, day in and day out. I think that's what we offer.
What are some of the reasons you have pursued leadership roles?
I don't, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we just kind of happen into these positions. I mean, and not to make light of our path, right? But I don't know that we woke up one morning and said, we want to be SES. I know for me, my path started here at HUD 10 years ago as a GS-13. Someone offered me an opportunity to come here and work at HUD. I saw this as an opportunity to pursue a career, advance in a mission that I really believe in, and I have, I changed my career in order to be in housing. So I feel compelled to give it all that I have. Being committed, being professional, doing the best job you can do, and I think because of that, we're here in these positions because we gave it our all. We did what it takes to be successful, and there's a formula for that, I think, and it's different for all of us. But I think united, we can say that we gave it our all, day in and day out.
Yeah, I think if you had just woke up and said, all I want to do is just be in a leadership position, it might not actually happen because you have to bring something to the table. You have to like the work, be passionate about it, have a vision for what that work can do to benefit the organization. And I certainly have met people, I'm sure we all have, that really that's just what they want. They just really want to be in charge, the boss or whatever. And largely they never quite get there because they don't, it's not real, It's just a facade. Right, and not willing to do the work. I think I gravitated towards it in a way because I liked the work itself. And it was interesting. In the world of budget, you get to hear about a lot of things because it's access to a lot of information. So that's what kept drawing me back in is, wanting to be in the know, not wanting so much to be in charge, but liking to know a lot about things. So I think it's mostly you have to find something that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and do well at it. Give it what you have.
I agree with that. My background is in community planning and development. That's what I studied in school. So I just happened to come to HUD. It was not that, even though I was studying community planning and development, that I was looking for a job at HUD at the time. And when I started as a clerk. So, and I was good at that. And I knew that I wanted to do more. And I got an opportunity to do more, and I was good at that. I gave it my all, and that's one thing I agree with. You have to give it your all. You have to be the best that you can be, and it's recognized. And when opportunities become available, you've done your training, you've gotten your education, you've built up your skills, and then you're more likely to be put in position. And eventually those positions lead to a leadership position.
I think it takes more than drive. I can't actually believe I'm saying that, but I meet people every day who come to me and say, Sheila, I want to be a 15. How do I get there? Like it's a cookie cutter microwave process that happens, overnight. And by the way, there are 12 and want to be there in 2 or 3 years. So one, so one thing I said is it takes more than drive. I think it takes something, your passion, like Susan and Tawana said, and what do you have to contribute? I think what keeps me coming here every day is that I honestly think that the employees deserve our best, and look for ways to make sure that they get the opportunities that they deserve. And so I'm just one of those persons that believes that you can be excited, you can be good at what you do, you can be excited about your job, and you can be excited about your career. And that's what will help move you forward, that excitement, so much so that it becomes your passion in a sense.
The one last thing that I'll offer, and I think this is just as important, is that you have to be willing to do what most people aren't willing to do. And that's what I found over my career as a professional. Whenever, say there was a new initiative or a new program, and say your boss came around and said, well, who wants to volunteer to do this? You said it's extra. You have to still do your work, but this is something new. You want to take this on. I've always been that person to raise my hand and say, I'll do it. It's going to require longer hours, more work. But, in the end, it worked out. And I volunteered. I did things, during my professional life where I wasn't getting paid, but that led to opportunities. So volunteering to do things that other people wouldn't do, taking on extra work that other people wouldn't do, all those things separate you from other people. And that's how I've never gone to someone and say, hey, I want to be, this. It just, because of the work ethic and the opportunities that you took advantage of, it just puts you in a position so that when the opportunity came, you were ready. And so, but it's all about putting yourself in that position to be able to say, yes, I'm ready. I'll do it. But if you're sitting in a corner and nobody's there, I don't know. What's this going to come and give you a 15? They're going to say, hey, you not like your red tie sitting over there in the corner. Do you want this 15? Never happens that way.
To follow up on that, and so if your supervisor, I'm going in dangerous territory right now. So if your supervisor says, hey, yeah, I am. If your supervisor says, hey, I'd like you to come in instead of teleworking.
Yeah.
Be open to that, because you don't know, they're not trying to, try to start a disciplinary action or anything like that on you necessarily, but instead trying to provide an opportunity for you to get that exposure. The realities of work life is out of sight, sometimes out of mind. And so I know that I've shared with some of my employees, hey, I don't have a problem with you teleworking, but you might want to come in, because when people, folks are saying, who is this person? Who is that person? I never see them. I just hear their name. That exposure that Tawana is talking about, very important. So always be open, even if you don't necessarily understand the ask. If you don't, ask for clarification, but always be willing to respond to the ask in a positive way.
And I think be open to the fact that there may not be that much in it for you. That it's really about doing something that just needs to get done. I think often people, not always, but often people want to know, well, is this going to be good for me or bad for me, or how's that going to move me forward or sideways? And I think you just sometimes have to just accept that not everything is a step forward. Sometimes even standing still is really a step forward.
And aren't we all looking for partners, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're showing a willingness to be a team player, that's ultimately what we're looking for, is a path forward that doesn't have a whole bunch of speed bumps, right? So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good jewels that I hope everyone took notes on. Some good jewels and tips as it relates to telework and as it relates to just being visible and saying that you can do something that is not maybe outside of your tour duty and maybe outside of your position description. So thanks for that. If it worked for you all, it should definitely work for all of us too. So thank you. And as we wrap up, because you gave us some great things as far as advancement and some things that have worked for you all and best practices and things of that nature. If you could just describe, because I know there are some folks out there that may have come upon challenges, and if you could describe some of yours, any hindrances or obstacles that you may have had in the past, now, whenever, so that those that are dealing with them currently, they know that those issues aren't unique to them, so to speak, and that maybe they'll find some comfort in knowing, despite those challenges and obstacles, you know, you're still able to persevere because of whatever reasons.
So I'll start. For me, it's pretty simple. I think fear keeps a lot of people from moving forward and doing those things that they believe within themselves that they can achieve. I kind of sound like a soundbite, but it really is true. If you are able to kind of let go of the fear of what people think about you, the fear of, what if I fail? We're all human, and so there is an expectation that you're going to fail. I think I sent out a thought of the day a couple of weeks ago from Michael Jordan, who talked about all the things that he failed at, missing so many shots or the winning, the last shot to win the game, but he said it was because of those failures that he was the success that he is. So.
I think for me, before I came back to HUD, because I actually started at HUD in 2000, be willing to leave. So.
Yeah, we're trying to hire, man. You're
No,
going in the wrong direction.
well, hey, but here's the story. I left in 2002, and I came back. But in me leaving HUD, part of it was that in the office in which I worked, there was a ceiling. They weren't hiring above a certain grade, and I knew that the potential was there for me to excel in the next grade. It wasn't about the grade, though, but it was about the work. And so I left. I received an opportunity, and I took it. And I had people encouraging me not to leave, but I did. And so in 2002, I left. In 2007, I came back. So it's knowing when would I get from that. And I had an issue at DHS, and so I left and came back to HUD. So what do I get from that? Always know your worth, what you bring to the table. And in some instances, you may want to fight, but in some instances, fighting takes too much energy. And so knowing when it's time for you to take a turn or make a shift that will ultimately lead to where you'll get. I never thought coming back to HUD in 2007 would have me be the Chief Learning Officer by 2012. Never imagined. And so, just know your worth, know your value, and know when it's time to make a move. Now, to Susan's point, it may not necessarily that you have to leave the department. Right. Maybe it's time for you to move from CPD to PIH, or from PIH for some of us to OCHICO, or the Office of the Secretary for others. So it's tapping into yourself, knowing your worth. Normally that comes out of whatever trial you experience, and to move you and propel you forward.
Thank you. And if you each could just provide a few remarks as we close to anyone listening or watching that may just need some encouragement on next steps from moving from where they are to where they would like to be. Just getting over that hump, or even if they don't have challenges to get there, but just some encouraging words or a piece of advice to send us off with.
I'm going to say something that actually bonuses a little bit off of what Dr. Wright, Sheila, was just saying. I think people should be patient with themselves, that there's, you know who you are, and you know what's best for you, and you know the choices that are going to be right for you. So sometimes it may seem like you're getting conflicting visions of yourself or mixed messages from the world, but just be patient with yourself and follow your path. And you know, if you have integrity, if you have passion, if you know your value, you'll get there.
So I'm going to offer something that's similar to what Susan said, but it's important, I think, because it helps focus the direction that if this is in fact what you want, you set the goal and you stay on the path. But I think once you've established what you want to do, you stay on that path. You can't be distracted by the noise that's around you. Some of the, I don't know what I would actually characterize it as, maybe not necessarily people, but the circumstances that happen to you along the way. And I think sometimes when you get on that path and things happen to you, then sometimes, that may serve to distract you or take you off course or make you question whether you are on the right path or wanting the right thing, whether it's for you. I think it's important to stay focused and ignore the noise, so to speak, so that you can get to your end and not be distracted by the little things that happen. They may be big things in your mind, but if you focus on the end game, I think you'll find that you get there.
Yeah, I agree with Wanda and with Susan that it's very important that you stay focused. It's important that you lay out your path and you know what you have to do. If you need to gain skills, you make sure that you do that. And one of the things I did along the way, because I applied for many positions and often I did not get the position. And in my mind, I was the best person qualified for the job. And I made it a habit of going back to speak to the person who was doing the selecting to ask them, not in a negative way, but what do I need to do to improve my skills so that the next time a similar opportunity becomes available, I would maybe rank higher on the list. And that helped me a lot because sometimes we don't have all that we should have when we're applying for jobs. We're looking at ourselves through rose-tinted glasses. It's just important for you to be sure that you have all you need to apply for positions.
I would say see every day as a new opportunity. And I know that sounds a little cliche-ish. Sounds like I'm going to someone to pump me up like a Tim Robbins or something. But every day is a new opportunity to do better, to get it right, to be more focused, to be more driven. Sometimes I think we get in our own way, and that's why we don't move forward. We would like to blame other people if we could, but if we really were to kind of examine ourselves, we would understand that we would know and recognize that sometimes it's us. So you didn't get the job, apply for another one. So you didn't get the promotion, okay? Look for an assignment. Know how to recover. And so seeing the opportunity in everything is a teachable moment. I've had instances here at HUD where, the budget didn't work out, the procurement action went south. I couldn't bring on the people that I wanted to bring on. But it caused me to be a lot more creative because at the end of this day, you still have to get the job done. And you still have to do what's required to move the organization forward. So see the opportunity. And if you have a problem seeing it, find somebody that can help you see it. And don't give up and don't take it personal. And move forward.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for your best practices, your experiences, even just describing some possible challenges and how to overturn those challenges and utilize those as just stepping stones towards one's own excellence. So we appreciate that. Are there any more questions before we close out? Okay, so no more questions from the field. So again, thank you each for your time, and we really appreciate you participating in our Women's Equality Day event.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.